Look, I'm going to be completely honest with you right from the jump. The Dallas Mavericks and Los Angeles Clippers are two of the most disappointing teams in the entire NBA this season. Both of them came into this year with legitimate playoff aspirations, maybe even championship hopes if everything broke right. And here we are in mid-November, and both teams are absolute disasters. But on Friday night, these two struggling squads gave us something we weren't expecting. A 133-127 double overtime thriller that was actually worth watching. Let's start with the Mavericks, who dropped to 3-10 with this loss. That's good for 14th place in the Western Conference, just one spot above the New Orleans Pelicans. Remember, this is a team that narrowly missed the playoffs last season, which is how they ended up with the #1 pick that became Cooper Flagg. And speaking of that, let me just say this. The Luca Doncic trade continues to be one of the dumbest decisions in NBA history. They fired Nico Harrison earlier this week, which was about 3 months too late, if you ask me. They should have fired him the second he walked into the ownership meeting and suggested trading Luca Doncic in the first place. And if not then, definitely when they heard what the return package was going to be. Anthony Davis and Cooper Flagg for Luca Doncic. That's the trade, and it's blown up in their faces in spectacular fashion. Anthony Davis is hurt again, which shocks absolutely nobody. The man has played 14 of the last 50 games he's been eligible for because he can't stay healthy, and now reports are coming out that he's also out of shape. Cooper Flagg, meanwhile, is 18 years old and looks exactly like what you'd expect from an 18-year-old playing against grown men in the NBA. He's not ready yet. And Luca's out in Los Angeles, averaging close to a 40-point triple-double and looking like the best version of himself we've ever seen. The most embarrassing part? After Nico Harrison got fired, some investigative report came out saying that he had grouped Jrue Holiday and Nikola Jokic in the same talent tier. Jrue Holiday and Nikola Jokic. The same Nikola Jokic who should probably be on his way to his 6th straight MVP this season. That's the level of basketball IQ they had running their front office for years. It's no wonder they're where they are. Now let's talk about the Clippers, who came into this game at 3-8 before improving to 4-8 with the win. They had one of the more eventful off seasons in the league. They traded away Norman Powell, who's now having a career year in Miami, so they could bring in Bradley Beal. How'd that work out? Beal played 7 games before having season-ending hip surgery. 7 games. Meanwhile, Norman Powell is lighting it up for the Heat. Then there's the whole Steve Ballmer salary cap circumvention scheme that was investigated over the summer. One of the richest men on the planet, allegedly running a Ponzi scheme with player salaries. That's the kind of year it's been for the Clippers. Kawhi Leonard can barely get on the court, which is pretty much his entire career in a nutshell. Chris Paul looks completely washed and probably should have retired this summer instead of subjecting himself to this circus. And yet, somehow, the one bright spot for the Clippers this season has been James Harden. I know, I can't believe I'm saying that either. But give credit where it's due. James Harden was absolutely sensational in this game. 41 points, 14 rebounds, 11 assists, and 51 minutes of action. That's his 82nd career triple-double and his 8th as a Clipper, which is now a franchise record. More impressively, it's the first 40-point triple-double in Clippers history. Think about that. The Clippers have had some great players over the years, and James Harden is the first one to ever drop 40 with a triple-double. Harden shot 13 for 25 from the field, including 6 of 12 from three-point range, and only had 3 turnovers in a double overtime game. He scored 10 of his 41 points across the 2 overtime periods when the Clippers desperately needed someone to close. In the second overtime, he took over completely, scoring or assisting on basically every crucial possession. This is vintage Harden, the kind of performance we hadn't seen from him consistently since the 2019-2020 season. That was his last first-team All-NBA selection before he fell off a cliff. He didn't make another All-NBA team until last year when he made 3rd team. But this season, he's been better across the board. Better scoring, better assist numbers, better shooting percentages from everywhere on the floor. The funny thing is, for a team that's been as bad as the Clippers have been, Harden is the only thing they can hang their hat on right now. If Kawhi Leonard can't play more than half the season like he's done his entire career, and if Bradley Beal is already done for the year after 7 games, then James Harden is literally all they have. The game itself started terribly for Dallas. The Clippers jumped out to a 26-12 lead early, and it looked like this was going to be another blowout loss for the Mavericks. But Dallas fought back behind Najee Marshall, who was making his first start of the season, and some solid play from their bench guys. The Clippers led 62-55 at halftime, and the third quarter was wild, with both teams scoring over 30 points. Dallas couldn't seem to get stops, and the Clippers couldn't seem to miss, but the Mavericks kept clawing back, and they were only down 93-86 heading into the fourth quarter. Then D'Angelo Russell took over. Russell, who's been pretty terrible most of this season outside of one 31-point game in Mexico City against Detroit, went absolutely nuclear in the fourth quarter. He scored 10 points in the final 6 minutes of regulation, hitting step-backs, pull-ups, and floaters to completely erase a 7-point deficit. With the game tied at 114, Russell hit a contested runner over Chris Dunn with under a minute left to force overtime. The first overtime was back and forth. Cooper Flagg, who had been relatively quiet most of the night with just 16 points, came alive when it mattered. He scored 4 of Dallas's 9 points in the first overtime, getting the ball in the middle of the floor and using his length to finish. But Harden matched him with 6 points of his own, and the game went to a second overtime tied at 123. Here's where things got interesting. With the game tied late in the first overtime, Harden shot a floater that Daniel Gafford appeared to block. The refs initially called it a goaltend, which would have given the Clippers the win, but the NBA's new automated officiating system, Court IQ, reviewed the play and determined that Harden's shot hadn't reached the peak of its arc yet when Gafford blocked it. So it was a clean block, and we were going to double overtime. The second overtime is where Dallas fell apart. They committed 2 critical turnovers, including a 24-second variation after the Clippers sent a double team at Cooper Flagg on the left block. Russell, who had carried them in the fourth, cooled off completely and committed 2 costly turnovers in the second overtime. The Clippers scored the first 6 points of double overtime and outscored Dallas 10-4 overall in the period. Harden hit 2 free throws and then a driving layup that gave the Clippers a 129-125 lead with just over 3 minutes left. At that point, the game was basically over. Dallas's undoing came down to turnovers and poor execution. They committed 25 turnovers total that led to 26 Clippers points. They shot just 28% from three-point range and missed multiple clean looks in both overtime periods. When you're playing without Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, and PJ Washington, you can't afford to turn the ball over 25 times and expect to win. For Dallas, Najee Marshall was excellent with 28 points and 8 rebounds in his first start. Russell also had 28 to go with 5 assists. Daniel Gafford added 10 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 blocks, including that huge block in the first overtime that sent the game to double overtime. Klay Thompson finished with 13 points but shot poorly overall. Derek Lively-Dew returned after missing 9 games with a sprained knee and played 17 minutes on a restriction. He had 4 points and 5 rebounds but looked rusty. Max Christie had 10 points and hit some timely threes to keep Dallas in it, but ultimately it wasn't enough. For the Clippers, Ivica Zubac was massive with 27 points and 11 rebounds. Him and Harden ran the pick and roll to perfection all night long. Bogdan Bogdanovic added 21 points off the bench and hit 5 threes, giving the Clippers scoring whenever Dallas threatened to take control. Derrick Jones Jr., the former Maverick, had 15 points and made several key defensive plays in the overtime periods. So, where do these teams go from here? For the Clippers, this win snapped a 6-game losing streak and improved them to 2-0 in NBA Cup group play. They've got a brutal 7-game road trip that started with this win in Dallas. They play at Boston on Sunday, then Philadelphia on Tuesday. Without Kawhi Leonard and Bradley Beal, they're going to need a lot more performances like this from Harden if they want to stay afloat. For Dallas, this was their 7th loss in their last 8 games. They're 3-10 and sitting 14th in the West. They haven't played a single game this season with their full starting lineup available. Between injuries to Kyrie, Anthony Davis, and PJ Washington, plus the ongoing adjustment to life after trading Luca, this team is in complete shambles. The midweek firing of Nico Harrison shows that ownership knows they screwed up, but firing the GM doesn't undo the damage that's been done. They're stuck with an injury-prone Anthony Davis on a massive contract and an 18-year-old rookie who isn't ready to carry a team yet. Meanwhile, Luca is thriving with the Lakers and looking like an MVP candidate. Jason Kidd said after the game that the boat is not burning. Well, Jason, I hate to break it to you, but the boat is absolutely on fire. The Mavericks are not making the playoffs this year. They're probably not making the playoffs next year either. At this rate, their ceiling is a second-round exit 5 years from now, and that might be generous. Look, I get it. This was an exciting game between 2 bad teams. Harden put on a show, Russell had a great fourth quarter, and we got double overtime on a Friday night. That's fun basketball to watch. But let's not lose sight of the bigger picture here. These are 2 teams that entered the season with real expectations. The Clippers thought they could compete in the West with their veteran core. The Mavericks thought Anthony Davis and Cooper Flagg could help them make noise in the playoffs. Both teams are nowhere close to where they thought they'd be. The Clippers have one win in November before this game. The Mavericks had 3 wins total coming into tonight. These aren't just struggling teams, these are franchises in crisis. The Clippers are held together by James Harden, a 36-year-old who everyone wrote off 2 years ago. The Mavericks are trying to build around an 18-year-old who shouldn't even be in the NBA yet, and a 32-year-old big man who can't stay on the court. So yeah, we got a fun game on Friday night. We got double overtime clutch shots and a historic performance from Harden. But when you step back and look at the two teams that gave us this game, it's hard not to feel like we just watched two sinking ships fire cannons at each other. The Mavericks play Portland on Sunday, another team that's struggling this season. The Clippers head to Boston to face the defending champs. Both teams have a long way to go if they want to salvage anything from this season. But at least for one night, they gave us something worth watching. Now, do I think either of these teams can turn it around? The Clippers have a better shot if they can ever get Kawhi Leonard healthy, which is a massive if. The Mavericks, they're cooked. They traded away a generational talent for a guy who can't stay healthy and a teenager who isn't ready. That's not something you recover from quickly. If you want to hear me continue to talk about train wrecks like the Mavericks and Clippers, consider subscribing. Dropping a like would be cool. Most importantly, have a great day.